Hi, welcome to another edition of the Alan Rosenberg Show. So I wasn't planning on doing another video. I did one yesterday. But I think the greatest thing about my channel for me is that I'm really lucky. It's not a big channel, that's for sure. But I have some really dedicated subscribers and viewers, and they watch my videos and they write to me and they comment. And we go back and forth. And it's fabulous and I love it. I mean, the video I did yesterday was strictly because one of my subscribers, Glenn, threw out the idea like the day before, and I'm like, that's a great idea. Let's do it. And it's actually doing well for my channel, which is great. So thank you again, Glenn. Anyway, point of this video is I got a bunch of comments from people, hey, you know, Denny Laine passed away. And I'm thinking to myself, well, sure, I wasn't going to do a video on Denny Laine. It's really sad, and I'm a fan for sure. But we're getting at an age where, everybody's passing away, and it's really sad. But I started thinking that Denny Laine is actually a really interesting story. So let's talk about Denny Laine and Wings and the Moody Blues and do a little memorial to Denny Laine, because I am a fan, actually. So, the ironic part, at least to me, the ironic part, Denny Laine is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is great. That's awesome. And it's nice that they did what they did, but they put him in the Hall of Fame for the Moody Blues, which is really interesting because I'm a big Moody Blues fan. I have every one of the Moody Blues albums, the band that you think of as the Moody Blues, starting from Days of Future Past and onward. A legendary band, and I love them. But of course, Denny Laine wasn't in the band with the Moody Blues when the Moody Blues were really successful. He was in the Moody Blues, I think it was like 1964 through 65, maybe 66. They had that one really big hit, Go Now, which we all know now because of Wings Over America, typically. But that was a huge hit for the Moody Blues in 64 or 65. They didn't write it. Denny Laine didn't write it. And that was pretty much it for that Moody Blues. I think they might have had one other minor hit. Denny Laine quit the Moody Blues after like a year or two. And that was his whole history with that band. They replaced him with Justin Hayward, and then they did Days of Future Past, and the rest is history. So it's kind of an ironic story. This is the Moody Blues is box set, Time Traveler. And Go Now is not here, and there's not a single song on here with Denny Laine. So I'm not trying to be cynical or a jerk. The fact is the Moody Blues are not really known because of Denny Laine. They put Denny Laine in the Hall of Fame with the Moody Blues, which I find kind of ironic. But it's nice. It's certainly a nice thing, and certainly I hope none of these fall. I do not do that on purpose when they fall. So that was that. Now, the Moody Blues knew the Beatles. I guess they opened up for the Beatles a couple times. And then when McCartney left the Beatles and started going solo, he grabbed Denny Laine and they started working together. And this is what they did together. I do not really want this stuff to fall. So Wildlife was the first album they did together. And I always give McCartney a lot of credit because after the Beatles, he did this really relatively uncommercial, unsuccessful to a certain extent stuff. And that took a lot of guts. And Denny Laine was a part of it. So here's Wildlife. We'll stick that over there. You can't really see, but that's okay. Then they did Red Rose Speedway, another really, I thought, kind of strange album. But of course, it had My Love, this huge hit. And Denny Laine is a part of the band. Paul McCartney and Wings, as they call it at that point. But make no mistake, this is Paul McCartney's band, obviously. The band has a lot of different members. They come and go. And then they do, and the album turned 50 yesterday. Denny Laine passed away yesterday at the age of 79. Turns out it was the 50th anniversary of Band on the Run. I think McCartney's greatest album to this day as a post-Beatles. And this is interesting because this is really just the three of them, Paul, Linda, and Denny Laine. It was a disaster making this album. I think it was Nigeria, if memory serves correctly. They got mugged, robbed, whatever. Just was not a good experience, but somehow they pulled out an incredible album. I mean, this album is light years ahead of these albums, at least in my opinion. And I don't think he's ever bettered it. It's still pretty much McCartney writing everything, Although I believe Denny Laine co-wrote No Words. It's a good song for sure. So let's put that over here for now. Band on the Run. After that, now McCartney's really made it huge as a solo artist, and they do Venus and Mars, an album I really like. And now they're going to be a touring band, and it's a band, and this is the track listing on that. Now, this is an interesting album in a sense because Denny Laine, I do not think has any co-writes on this album. But you got Medicine Jar on there, which is one of my favorite songs, and that was written by Jimmy McCulloch. So I take it that McCartney may have been open to co-writing, but Denny Laine not a co-writer on that album. Then they do It's a Speed of Sound. That becomes really like a Wings album where there's more co-writes and more, it's not just McCartney. And this actually has Time to Hide on it, which is a killer rockin' song that Denny Laine wrote and sings. And I think most of us, at least me, also fell in love with it because of the live performance in Rock Show. And that was featured heavily on Wings Over America. I think one of the greatest live albums of all time. I have a lot of videos on live albums because I'm a huge live album guy. And I choose Wings Over America as the number 8 greatest live album of all time. That was in my choice. But that's the gatefold of Wings Over America. And the great thing about that album and the video, the movie Rock Show, is they're a real band. Obviously it's McCartney. He's the centerpiece for sure. But they're a band, and it's a great view. I love watching Rock Show. That's a laserdisc of it. And it's just awesome. And Denny Laine does a lot. He sings Richard Corey, right? Who wrote that? Paul Simon, I think, wrote that one. Time to Hide is on there. And he's a really talented guy. You really get to see it in Rock Show because he could play bass. He could play... at one point, he's playing a double neck guitar, like a 6-string, maybe a 12-string on there. Maybe for Band on the Run, that was the song. Really talented guy. Plays piano at some points and great singing as well. They do London Town, which is an album that got trashed. I still have the reviews. I don't know if it's just me. I don't know what it is, but I love London Town. For whatever reason, I bought it the day it came out. I was not a huge fan of At the Speed of Sound because I just didn't really like silly love songs, and Let 'Em In was the other big hit from that. Didn't care for that. Whatever reason why, I love London Town. And there you have the three guys again. This is the really... Band on the Run was the three of them, Paul, Linda, and Denny Laine, and so was this album, pretty much the three of them. And this album's got a lot of mixture of stuff, and this is your Denny Laine Wings album. He co-wrote London Town, which I think is a great little title track. The children's song, Children, Children is a great song, and Deliver Your Children is another great track on that album. I love that one, Deliver Your Children, really catchy. He co-wrote that. And I'm pretty sure he did the last two tracks, Don't Let It Bring You Down, which is a great one, and then Morse Moose and the Grey Goose, which is a really strange closer, but it's fun. I don't know what it is about London Town, but I love it. Unfortunately, that was the second to last Wings album. They did one more after London Town. Let's stick that over there. And that was Back to the Egg. Kind of a strange release. Was not the big hit, didn't get critically great reviews. It's in retrospect, it's reviewed a lot better. And on this album, he did Again and Again and Again. But not the greatest thing on the album, for sure. That's the end of Paul McCartney and Wings. So Denny Laine was with Paul McCartney and Wings for 10 solid years, which is a pretty good run. But that was it. You're talking around 1980, 81. Beyond that, I have a great bootleg. Surprised he still never releases. This is a bootleg, Paul McCartney and Wings' Last Flight to Complete 79 Glasgow concert. This is for the Back to the Egg tour. This is an amazing live show. You actually know they did officially release the live version of Coming Up. That comes from this show. This is a great concert, by the way. Love this bootleg. That's a great one. After that, the only thing I have from Denny Laine is he did a solo record. I think this came out when he was still in Wings. Holidays, McCartney owns the rights to Buddy Holly's publishing, and he used to do a Buddy Holly thing every year, and they did this is a bootleg called Two Buddies on Holidays, but there is actually an official release of these tracks where Denny Laine is all over it, singing it and playing it with McCartney, and they're doing the Buddy Holly songs. This is a fun release. That's the last thing I have from Denny Laine. He got sick. He passed away yesterday. I believe it was COVID related. He died from chest issues, breathing issues, but I think it was from COVID, my understanding. Not that long ago, they did a benefit concert for him. I guess financially, and I had heard over the years he had financial problems, and that's part of the thing that just threw me. It made me kind of sad, because I'm sitting here thinking, listen, I work retail. I never made a lot of money, big money. Can you imagine you're Denny Laine, you play in Wings, one of the biggest bands of the 70s into the early 80s. I mean, they were huge. And I know it's McCartney's band, but he was in that band for 10 years. They played the biggest arenas in the world, sold millions and millions of records. And on top of that, on this album, he co-wrote Mull of Kintyre with McCartney, which was the biggest selling 45 in the history of England, Britain, up to that point. It's still probably one of the biggest selling, and it's a really cool track. It's amazing that was a hit and it took off, but I love that song. You can find that on there and other places. So you co-wrote Mull of Kintyre. You're with McCartney and Wings for 10 years. You're on these albums that we just discussed. You're on Rock Show, and towards the end of your life, you have financial problems. I don't know his story, Denny Laine. I don't know what went down. But I guess even if he made a lot of money back then, if that ended in the early 80s, so you're talking 40 years later, it's just kind of a bummer, right? It just made me kind of sad that, I would think Denny Laine would be loaded, right? Even from the 10 years with McCartney. And yet he's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for the Moody Blues, but not for Wings, which I find really strange. Obviously, McCartney should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but Wings was, like I said, in the 70s. There wasn't too many bands bigger than them. And the funny thing is, I'll tell you personally, I stopped seeing McCartney years ago because I just got tired of the Beatles stuff. I really do. I've seen McCartney a couple times. I never need to see McCartney do Hey Jude and the Beatles songs. I just have no interest. If McCartney did a tour of Wings, I would go see it, for sure. That's how I am. But I'm sick of the Stones playing the same set for 15 years. I don't have any desire to see them either, unless you're going to start playing different stuff. So, call me crazy. Anyway, that's my tribute to the late, great Denny Laine. Thank you for the music. I will tell you, I'm a child of the 70s. I was born in 63. So when the Beatles broke up, I was 7. I don't really remember them as an active band, but I certainly was a fan of Wings. I remember 1976 when they toured for Wings Over America. I remember it like yesterday, and I bought Wings Over America the day it came out. And I still, like I said, my number 8 live album of all time. And Denny Laine's certainly a big part of it. So my little tribute to Denny Laine. Thanks for the music. My condolences to your family. I don't know you personally, and I don't know your personal financial story, but you deserve better if you did have financial problems, and I don't know your story, but it's kind of sad. Anyway, thanks again. Let me know your thoughts. I always appreciate your comments and your feedback, and thanks for giving me this suggestion, because I'm glad I'm doing it. I feel sad, but I'm glad I'm doing it. And I would not have done this video unless a bunch of you said, hey, Alan, Denny Laine died, and maybe you should say something. And so this is my honest, emotional opinion. You're getting to know me. I'm an emotional guy, and no scripting, etc. So, as always, and this is what I like to say, stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks for your loyalty. Hit subscribe if you're new. Check out my other videos. And again, my condolences to Denny Laine's family. And thanks for the music. Have a great night.